What if it was possible to end unhappiness? Imagine this, a complete and permanent end to unhappiness. And there is a step-by-step process designed by someone as credible as the Buddha himself. Welcome to this 5 mini lecture series on Vipassana Meditation, where we will explore in a step-by-step method the Buddha's technique of unconditioning, let's say. And what is really interesting here, that Buddha being such a modest teacher and also offering such wide and diverse range of teachings, it's only in one particular teaching that he makes a very bold claim that this is the direct path to awakening, which is in a sutta, a discourse called Satipatthana Sutta, and that is where most of Vipassana teaching comes from. Now, what is Vipassana really? Let's clear that out, and there are some myths surrounding what is Vipassana. So let's clear out first of all what is Vipassana. Vi and Passana, these are the two parts of the word Vipassana. Vi means clear or special, and Passana means seeing. In other words, you can call it special vision or seeing very clearly what the reality, the experience of mind and body. On a more practical note, it's almost like usually we see the reality through the lenses of our conditioned glasses. My glasses might be white, so everything I see might be white. Somebody else might have blue colored glasses, let's say, of their conditioning, and what they see is everything is blue. So really, we all experience the world and the so-called reality through the conditioned lenses in a very low definition. So what Vipassana is really is seeing reality in very high definition. So you really have the complete picture of what is happening inside your mind body, inside the other person's mind body, and outside also. And really Vipassana is really about life. It's not just about talking practical things, but when unexpected things happen, how do you really react to it? In the middle of recording a video, I could have just gone, oh my God, Vipassana just teachings a level of awareness and acceptance, so no problem. Let's continue. So Vipassana is really seeing reality in high definition. So we really see, how our mind is cognizing and interpreting everything, perhaps how the other person's mind then is cognizing and interpreting everything. Almost, if you've seen the movie Matrix, imagine Vipassana allows you to give that Matrix style, that type of vision that Neo had, very high definition. So you could really see all the bullets coming in such slow motion, bullets coming out of your own mind or other person's mind. You can almost see it so slowly and clearly, and then you can easily dodge it, and not be affected by it. Or, when these unexpected things like this happen in life, it really does not impact that inner peace, the inner stability within you. Okay, so then let's talk about removing unhappiness. How is that even possible? So the Buddha takes a very scientific approach here. Instead of some of the contemporary of his time, some of the wonderful teachings we had in India before him, they always talked about this wonderful higher state of, samadhi, moksha, this beautiful magical states, which were also pointing to the truth, but I think people were getting too attached. So Buddha used very simple and scientific approach, and instead of saying what it is, he really focused on what is not. So he always says, he does not say highest happiness, he says end of unhappiness. And also how? Then he just identifies these are the three root causes of unhappiness. Then he just says, okay, then if we can remove these three root causes of unhappiness, that is it, then that's the state of permanent happiness, the highest happiness. And by using such terms, again, people can't grasp to it or cling to it too much. Oh, this magical state, I want this highest, most blissful state. So and the three root causes of unhappiness he identifies. In Pali, the ancient language used in Buddha's time, they are called lobha, moha and dosa. So lobha is, we can translate it as greed or craving. Then dosa, we can translate it as aversion, resistance, or even potentially anger. And then the final one is moha. We can translate that as delusion. So delusion means we think we know, but we don't really know. What don't we know? We don't know about what is reality. We assume that the interpretation of ourselves or the society, we assume that to be the ultimate truth. So and then this is what the Buddha says, that once we remove these three root causes of unhappiness step by step, that is what basically leads us to the highest happiness, the unconditional happiness, a type of happiness that does not depend on any external conditions. Imagine that type of happiness that's just within you, no external factors, variables, people can influence that. And this is where he gave this wonderful technique of Vipassana meditation. So this is what we will explore. And there are a few different sources and teachings around Vipassana, but the main one, the most popular one, is a sutta called Satipatthana Sutta. And this is what we will primarily focus on in this teaching series. And Buddha understood that each person was different. So he gave, instead of just one single technique, he gave like a body of techniques, or basically 4 foundations that one could practice Vipassana on. First foundation is body, so we can say mindfulness of the body or Vipassana on the body. Second one is Vipassana on the feelings, or more accurately it's sensations, or mindfulness of feelings and sensations. And this is where one of the most popular Vipassana schools, the tradition of Ubakin and Goenkaji, that's where they focus on. Whereas another very famous Burmese tradition coming from Myanmar master Mahasi Sayadaw, and that one focuses much more on the first foundation of the body. So you have body as the first foundation, Vipassana on the body, Vipassana on the feelings or sensations, and third one, my favorite, is Vipassana on the mind, or mindfulness of the mind. One of my beloved teachers in Myanmar, Sayadaw Utejaniya, he focuses on the mindfulness of the mind. And fourth one is mindfulness of Dhamma, Vipassana on Dhamma. There are few translations. Some people call it, translate Dhamma as mental categories or mental mental objects. The translation that I kind of came up with myself, more so just to practically understand, is I would call it mindfulness of the inner universe, because in my experience this is what it describes, the inner universe. So these are the 4 foundations, and one could practice any of these 4. Within each there are a few different techniques, but often people start with mindfulness of the body, and then they move to feelings, mind, and then Dhamma. Arguably they are more subtle, but in saying that there's definitely people directly go to mindfulness of feelings in Goenkaji's tradition, and people directly go to the mind in Sayadaw U Tejanya's teachings. And also one quick clarification which may be useful here, because in the West, thanks to the wonderful work that S.N. Goenka did in spreading Vipassana since sort of 1968 or so in India, that people often assume that it's only his technique or his tradition is the only Vipassana teaching available. Definitely not true. And also that the only silent 10 days retreat, that's the only way to do it. Definitely not true. In the Buddha's time, of course, there was no 10-day retreats format. Ubakin and S.N. Goenka adopted this format to kind of, scale it up to a large group of people in one hit. And of course, in those days there was no internet, so that was what they could come up with. But of course, luckily now we have internet, and Vipassana traditionally was designed as one-on-one teaching. So yeah, this is what I hope to also provide moving forward. Something I've been doing personally last couple of years. And this is what I hope to continue doing, utilizing the new technologies and providing more personalized teachings. So yeah, this is the basics of Vipassana, the 4 foundations of Satipatthana Sutta. And let's talk about our practical life. So by practicing this Vipassana, this mindfulness, we really start to see one of the biggest differences that I've noticed is usually there will be some outside stimulus, some outside event, or a thought even that came in my mind, and then I would just kind of react accordingly. So it's almost like there is input from outside and output is like boom. There is a stimulus and reaction, boom. So that means it was just whatever was conditioned in the mind. So it was often just the conditioned response that came out, typically in that low definition. But ever since I've been practicing Vipassana meditation in last 3 and a bit years, I really notice such a noticeable difference, that often there is a stimulus, some external event happening, or even my inner thought, and then most of the case there is this little bit of space in between, and in this little space, instead of a blind reaction, why he did this, why she did that, oh, how could I think even myself, terrible. Instead of those automatic reactions, because of this little space, the space of consciousness, I can choose my response. This is what's happening, this is my conditioning, this is just my craving, or this is just my anger. I'm not really seeing the clear picture. Or even with the other person, it's just their own conditioning, it's maybe their anger or their craving, whatever it might be. Then it's like, now I see the picture more clearly, and then there is not a huge charge of emotions involved, and then I can choose a more wise approach. So this is very nice, and I feel so grounded. It's like not so subject to all the variabilities, because otherwise I depended so much on what other people said or did, or even the thoughts that came up within me. So it's almost the key to my happiness, key to my peace. I was often giving it to other people, so to speak, when they say something mean or inconsiderate or whatever. It's almost like I give my key of happiness or peace to them, and then they control it, and then I might be upset for next few hours or 2 days because of that. So yeah, and then this helps me in taking the key back and put it in my own pocket. I mean, forget about other people's. Think about, speaking of only my own mind, my mind comes up with all sorts of unhappiness. It's funny, especially with this deep Vipassana practice in last few years. I clearly see how I create so much of, actually majority of my suffering is just created here. And Buddha points out very well that the worst enemy is not out there, not some mean person. Worst enemy is one's own untrained and unguarded mind. It's like, So then I realized, before I was trying to, change the world, I'm like, okay, I can just change myself first of all. But really step-by-step method, utilizing this Vipassana meditation, as I found it was the most complete, yet very practical, nothing to do with a religion. It's just noticing moment to moment our own mind-body experience clearly and without the lens of conditioning. So it's just like, as one of my wonderful teachers here in Thailand, Ajahn Buddha says, it's a very simple process in practical terms. We start with intention to be conscious, intention to be mindful, and then just what is happening in this moment, in the mind, in the body. Okay. And really put 100% of our attention in this moment, as if our life depends on it. It's like, just this one moment, just this one moment. And this is what really helps us clearly see the whole picture. And instead of just almost missing it and living on autopilot, we really see it in high definition. This is what it looks like. And this is what then leads us, if we practice it in this way, to experiencing three of the universal characteristics of this conditioned world, of the matrix, if you want to use this term. There are three characteristics of this conditioned world. Is in the Pali, it's anicca, dukkha, anatta. So anicca means impermanence, the law of impermanence. I mean, many of us intellectually agree to it. But it is amazing when you're experiencing your mind and body directly. You clearly see how quickly something arises and how quickly it passes away. Especially if you're not involved in the story, in the movie of the mind. If you've taken one step back and you're just kind of observing whatever the movie mind is making, to really see each thought or each feelings even comes and just goes. Especially if you're not involved, it's just like, wow, this feeling of sadness or a sexual desire or some type of anger. It's just like, wow, how could it just disappear on its own, in literally 2 minutes and sometimes even 2 seconds. So that's impermanence. Then dukkha, that's the word often translated just as suffering, but perhaps better you can say unhappiness, or even better, unsatisfactoriness, unfulfillment nature of the conditioned world. And this is very interesting. What the Buddha points out, that basically everything we can do within the conditioned world would never actually lead to ultimate and permanent satisfaction. Now, I don't know about you, but I have tried to pursue many of these so-called meaningful initiatives, doing some wonderful charity projects to help poor people in India during COVID, or people in Myanmar during this current crisis. And it's been amazing to fundraise so much, even past in Syria. But it's really interesting after it's done, after the satisfaction lasts for such a short time, even though it's for such a beautiful cause. And same thing before, when I was doing coaching, and I could really see such a transformation in some of my clients. And it was nice, but again, the satisfaction did not last that long. So this was really interesting. Of course, if you think about kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs in our evolution, this is a very useful intermediate step, for example, coaching, or fundraising, charity events, helping other people in a worldly level, really wonderful, and a lot better than our average unconscious existence. But you start to see, this is not the ultimate thing. And of course, those 3 root causes of unhappiness that we discussed before. And final thing, very interestingly, the Buddha says, is Anatta. Similar to some of the Indian, Hindu and yogic teachings, yogic and Vedantic teachings, there is no such thing as individual self. There is no I or no you for that matter. And this is really powerful. The Buddha explains that this is just a process of nature, a law of cause and effect happening. And there is no individual entity as I or you. Think about that for a second. No such thing as I or you. I mean, pretty much all of my problems will be just gone because they're all related to often I, or I want this, or why am I feeling this way, or you did this, he, she did that. But I'm like, it's like, what if we realize that there is no such thing as you and I, but it's just like left hand and right hand, it's like left hand and right hand fighting, no, I'm better, no, I want this, and no, you want that. But then suddenly one day they just realize, oh wow, we are just this one thing, or part of this one entity, or there is no such thing as I. So that was a simple example. But that's the idea of Anatta, or non-self, or no individual I. So the practice of Vipassana, step by step, really leads us to this physical experience of these 3 characteristics. Seeing impermanence, seeing the unsatisfactoriness, and seeing the non-selfness, let's say. And this is amazing. Then once we see this and experience this clearly, we don't even have to let go of our attachments. It just happens because we understand truly. So it's not about trying to let go. It's not trying to let go of our craving or anger or resistance or conditioning. But it's just meet it with understanding. And this is what Vipassana helps us do. And one thing to really remember, as both of my wonderful teachers, Sayadaw Tejaniya and Ajahn Putta would say, the key is do it with right level of effort. In typical Vipassana settings, we often try too hard to really win it. But sometimes I feel it's the really yin energy approach, almost relax and be aware. That's how Sayadaw would say. Just take a step back, relax, chill out. It's not some short war, just more like a strategic long-term game. So you just relax, lay back, and I know so. And really with right attitude. So once you start to understand that this is all just part of nature process, law of cause and effect, everything that is happening right now, it's just the effect of a previous cause. So it's not even really our responsibility. But what is really important is how we respond to what is happening now. So the current experience is really not that important, good or bad, but how we respond to it, this is what then plants the seed for future. And also bringing it back to Vipassana context. So it's how we observe, how we respond. Whether we are craving towards all the good things, we want more and more, we are really trying to push away what we don't want or what is unpleasant. Instead we just have to see, all of this is just an experience. Experience is just an experience. This is no I or me or mine. This is something really beautiful that starts to happen. So this is what we mean by meditate with right attitude. And then relax, also sometimes I go on the other side and don't do anything and become way too relaxed and not putting any effort to be aware. And then, then it's like wind can push me in any direction. So then putting some effort, but sort of the middle path, not too much, not too little. And being aware. And then the final thing is really the continuity of awareness. So of course we start with meditating on the cushion, 10 minutes, 1 hour, however long you practice, or do some walking meditation, but really then bringing it in a daily life during all the actions. Of course we don't need to maintain such deep level of mindfulness as we are sitting down, but just a light surface level awareness. So a little exercise before we finish off. In next session we will cover Vipassana on the body in detail, but the simplest part in it is just being aware of your posture. So whilst you're sitting, be aware that you're sitting. Whilst you're standing or walking, be aware that you're standing or walking. So let's take 1 second, just see if you can be aware that you're just sitting. See? How easy is this Vipassana? Who said it's hard? Next time when you're walking, see if you can just remind yourself, like almost label this. Walking, sitting. Very nice way to, bring you back into the present moment. Good. So this is how we practice. These are really the 3 steps, Awareness, and really having that acceptance and of whatever the experience is, having almost a sense of impartiality. This is what we also often use it as right view, and just maintaining the continuity of awareness. And really you will start to see it. The quality of your life literally starts to change. A type of, initially a level of peacefulness, and a type of happiness then, when you just understand something. Wow, it's really beyond 6 senses, before I thought Vipassana was, this serious thing I must do to, reduce some of my craving or anger. But man, I can tell you, done all sorts of happy things and adventures in my life. But I can honestly tell you, the level of happiness, the depth of happiness you feel here, such aliveness when you see the whole life in high definition, it's really unmatchable. And the best thing is, you don't have to rely on anyone, you don't have to go anywhere, and you don't even have to spend any money for it. Sit, be aware, and it's just like, wow, the ultimate happiness in 2 minutes. If you're in business, that's the best return on investment, the best ROI that you could possibly get. Me being a good Indian, I love it. Highest happiness in 2 minutes. Wonderful. Alright, my friends, thank you very much. I also want to give big gratitude to all of my teachers, Sadhu, Tejanya, of course Goenkaji for getting me started here, of course Mahachula Buddhist University for this wonderful 1-year journey of Mindfulness Master, and of course Ajahn Putta for the last few months of really wonderful teachings. It's thanks to all of your support that this is becoming possible. And dear friends, please leave any comments, what you thought of this, any suggestions, and please, that would really help me learn and serve more effectively. So really, we can all awaken together.